should be on. I should be live. I am live. Hello. Hi, Danny. The light in here is so shit. Is that any good? Like, I'm waiting because there's a delay. So I'm waiting to see what that does to the light. That's not bad, actually. Can work with that. I've done my hair today, like it's my own hair. And I've like curled these bits and put a flower clip in the back. It's called the Bourgeois Bride, and it's what every middle class bitch has done her hair like for the last 5 years for her wedding. Thank you. It's a dress. It's a full-on dress. Hi, Nick. How are you? We're reading The Vampire. And I already, what's up, John? I already read the first chapter at the end of the last video, but we're doing it again. It was just kind of a teaser. And I'm not going to do stupid voices because I actually like this story. So, okay. I guess we can't really dive into it. We've got to sort of wait for people. Oh, there's like 4 people here. Wow. It's almost like planning things in advance and then doing them lets people actually join much better than just surprising yourself and everyone else. I'm glad you're better. I was a little worried about you. Nick. You got this. Whatever it is. I had lunch with Evelyn and Di today, and I had missed Di so much. So that was really nice. And I ate too many chips. So, when everyone's here, I'm probably just gonna get started. Hey, Josh! Well, we finished the burning. Everything's burnt. Everyone's betrayed. Everyone is secrets. Aw. Yeah, I only got the fatigue. I didn't get the, flu-like symptoms. I'm really glad to hear it, Nick. You got friends who don't know you. That's me. Oops. I also don't know where anything is. I met a cat today. I met the cat that has been sitting outside and is Flora's enemy. It's a grey and white cat, and I met the person he lives with as well, but I forgot her name. And he's called Warren, which is just such a good name for a cat. So I gave him a pat, and then when I got home, Flora and Fitz were waiting for me, and they were hungry, and I was like, hey, guess who that is? And they were really mad that I had met Warren. Warren the cat. Okay, I think we're almost all here. I should probably give Evelyn a text. It's strange wearing my own hair on the stream. It's like, where's all of this? Where's the covering? Why do I have so much face in this area? It's just more, shows up more because I'm looking down a lot. What terrible joke. I need to know all terrible jokes. Just get a text here from the word YouTube. Because last time I texted her the word betrayal and she thought she'd betrayed me in some way. Why is the screen so dark? That's a bit better, I think. No, it doesn't. Hello! Yes, it is. It's a very 70s inspired bell sleeve dress. What do you call an Australian with half a dozen rabbits up his bum? Warren. That makes sense. That makes sense, yeah. I'm never going to be able to not think about that when I next see that cat or my uncle by that name. I never heard that joke before. Incredible. Thought I heard him outside. Okay, we're all here apart from Josh and Josh M. Josh Good. And he was here the first time I read the first chapter as the wee teaser, so I think we can probably just dive in. Deadly Offer by Caroline B. Cooney. Chapter 1. Suppose, it said in its voice like antique silk, faded and slightly torn, that I could make you popular. It did not smile, for which Althea was glad. She did not particularly want to see it smiling. She waited, but no explanations followed. Talking to it was somewhat upsetting. Althea kept her back to the wall, waiting for it to leave. Usually it left rather early, having, she supposed, appointments to keep. Tonight it stayed, waiting. She knew it could always wait longer than she could. Her heart snagged on that word, popular. At last Althea asked, "How could you make me popular?" It nodded for some time, its entire trunk pulsing slowly back and forth, as if it were on a spring. "Tell me," it said in that slippery satin voice, "what is the most popular group in school?" That was easy. "Cheerleaders," said Althea with yearning. The varsity squad was a closed unit of slim blondes and sparkly brunettes who not only never spoke to Althea, but far worse, never noticed her either. "Who," it went on like a river or a tide, "do you wish had never gotten on the squad?" That too was easy. "Celeste," said Althea. Celeste had made varsity as a freshman, which, to the sophomores, juniors and seniors who failed to make it, seemed unfair. Celeste was quite extraordinarily beautiful. At first Celeste did not appear sufficiently energetic to cheer. She walked slowly, languidly, hands trailing. Celeste seemed more of a romantic dreamer than a screaming, leaping, possibly even perspiring member of a gymnastics-oriented squad. But cheerleading transformed her. Once in uniform, Celeste became a star. And popular. So popular. Althea longed for the popularity that cheerleading brought. Althea was a gentle girl. She had sweet features and a demure posture. When she spoke, people quieted to hear her distinctive whispery tremor. In elementary and middle school, Althea had had a circle of giggly girlfriends, a phone that rang constantly, invitations every weekend, spend the night, or order pizza, or go to the movies. She was on the softball team, won several silver ribbons in horseback riding, and went on a wonderful group skiing trip. She had thought that in high school she would become a serious skier, and she had bought a beautiful ski outfit to shine on the snow. But high school was horrible. The circle of friends, like a kaleidoscope, turned and refocused, had split cleanly apart to form new groups. One group was heavily into individuality and new experiences. They wore trendy clothing or torn jeans, unique sweatshirts or giant earrings. They found Althea altogether too dull to bother with. Another group had boyfriends, and Althea, without one, was unwelcome. The third group became scholarly and embarked on a soul-whipping routine of trying to beat one another out with exam grades and extra credit reports. Althea's throaty whisper became a liability. Nobody heard it. She had to raise her voice, and the voice felt foreign, like an intruder, like a stranger yelling. Loneliness absorbed her life. It was a quiet life. No phones, no laughter, no gossip, no giggles. It was November, a month of dark and chill. A month in which Althea saw herself like an abandoned waif in the gutter without hope. Perhaps, the voice continued, Celeste could be taken off the squad. She slipped down those words as if on a water slide in an amusement park. She noticed how the voice liked to split sentences, teasing with the first word, who, what, perhaps. She did not like standing quite so close. It had given her all sorts of assurances, but did she know for sure that she could believe these promises, under the circumstances? Would there not, it continued in a lazy, inquiring sort of manner, as if they had all year to consider it, be tryouts for Celeste's replacement? Althea nodded. The cheerleading squad was a precision team. They worked in pairs, and they would have to have an even number. Althea had had years and years of dancing and gymnastics. Nevertheless, she had not made the team. The high school was jammed with girls who had years of dancing and gymnastics. There would be a lot of competition, said Althea, remembering the taste of humiliation and despair when she'd been cut from the list long before the final round of tryouts. Perhaps, the voice said, with such slowness that it seemed to be melting away, I could arrange for the competition to be missing. She let her mind drift over that, skimming like a seabird on the surface of the suggestion. Not landing, no, not part of it, but thinking about it, the power of it, the potential of it. What a change it would make in her life. She would be among the lovelier and more exciting girls, the girls who partied and laughed, drove fast cars, and sat with adorable boys. Me, Althea thought. Popular. A cheerleader. Perhaps someday I would even be captain, she whispered. Perhaps so. Its skin was the colour of mushrooms. And date somebody on the basketball team, she breathed, imagining it. She remembered how the cheerleading squad sat on the bus with the team. How if they won the game there was laughter and shared snacks, and favourite songs were played while they foot danced, because the bus driver didn't allow standing. How in the back of the bus the girls sat entwined with their boyfriends, their laughter quieter, more intimate. How couples got off the bus last, holding hands. Maybe even Michael, said Althea, so softly she was not sure she'd let the thought out, because the thought was so precious. Michael. Maybe even Michael, the voice agreed. Althea pulled herself together. She was envious of the popular girls, but she was kind. She didn't want anything nasty to happen. And Celeste seemed like a perfectly nice person. "What would you do to Celeste?" said Althea warily. It smiled. The teeth were not quite as pointed as Althea had expected, but she shuddered anyway. She was told with an air of reproach, "It doesn't hurt, you know. It's just rather tiring." Celeste would simply be rather tuckered out. The eyes changed their focus, leaving Althea's face. She felt as if she were released from suction cups. It stared at the sky, at the black, cloudless sky sprinkled with stars, gleaming with moonlight. It seemed to find a companion with whom smiles were exchanged. Celeste would be back in school the next day. Then why wouldn't she stay on the squad? I told you. She'll be tired. She'll feel a need to resign. She'll want a little time for herself. There's no cause for you to worry. Her grades won't suffer. Althea decided not to think about the details. She did not let herself think about being popular. I can't condone, but on the other hand, a simple exercise that would leave Celeste tired, and after all, Celeste is only a 9th grader and I'm in 10th, and I deserve it more. Its fingernails were grey like foil. "Althea," it said, stroking her name, feeding it new ideas. "Think about school tomorrow. Think how you sit alone at lunch, how nobody talks to you in study hall, how nobody shares a soda with you after class." How vivid it was, how often it had been true. The voice was thready and sticky like a spider's web. "But if you're a cheerleader..." Althea saw herself among the slender blondes and sparkly brunettes. "You, Althea," said the voice, softer than clouds. "You deliver Celeste." Althea shivered. "I," breathed the vampire, "will make you popular." End of chapter 1. And that's the chapter we already did. But we're doing it again for the sake of having everything in the same place. I do like how they don't refer to it as a vampire until right at the end of the chapter. Oh, speaking of sharing a soda with friends after school. That's the crisp, refreshing taste of Coke Zero. Not a sponsor of this video. How are we feeling? Chapter 2? As always, first vote has it. Yeah, the vampire, the gender doesn't seem important, particularly. Okay, good. Just checking that we were all on board, because, I'm not doing the stupid voices, so it's a little bit different than the last book. So, just checking in that everyone's enjoying it the way I'm doing it right now. I feel like reading half of the book and then suddenly giving the vampire a JFK accent. I'm not going to. Chapter 2. But how? How was this supposed to work? Celeste wafted down the halls of high school like a sunset of spun gold, wrapped in the possession of her friends. From a distance, Althea would see that soft hair and those sparkling eyes. From around a corner, Althea would hear that trembly laugh, a laugh that shivered with delight. It was so unfair. Celeste had every beauty, every friend, every power. You deliver Celeste, I will make you popular. My only claim to popularity, thought Althea, is that I have the same lunch schedule as the cheerleading crowd. I get to stand in the same cafeteria line. When Althea went to lunch, Celeste was ahead of her, shimmering like a mirage. Celeste skimmed through the line, putting almost nothing on her tray, gliding to her seat. Celeste's laugh sparkled across a crowded table where friends jostled and squeezed. Althea's tray was heavy, and the plates slid around, bumping one another and threatening to spill. She carried it carefully, and when she finished paying, looked around for a place to sit. A group of girls she knew fairly well filled a distant table. There was no room. A girl like Celeste could dance up and they would make room, but for a girl like Althea they did not. Her old friends from middle school were with their new friends from other parts of town. If she joined them, she would be a river barge shoving through sailboats. They would part to let her through, but she could never join. The only thing worse than being alone was to have people tolerate you because they felt pity. Is anyone having high school flashbacks? Because God knows I am. Althea's eyes swept the entire cafeteria, and in the entire cafeteria there did not seem to be an empty seat. Come on, said an impatient voice behind her. Get going. Althea lifted her heavy tray and took 2 steps out into the hostel lunchroom. People trotted past, their trays as full as hers, but their steps were light. They found places to sit, and people looked up and said to them, "Hey, how are you? Sit down." There's no room for me, thought Althea. There never will be. She walked past table after table, and from each chair eyes turned, inspected Althea, and turned away. Every student in the high school had a chance to say, "Sit with us." Every student in the high school said nothing. Eventually, Althea was back at the counter. If she'd had any appetite, it was gone. She sat her tray down untouched. I'll just stand outside in the courtyard till lunch is over, Althea thought. I'll pretend. A silver shot of laughter came from the cheerleaders' table. Celeste planted a sweet kiss on the cheek of the handsome boy next to her. I want that life, Althea thought. I want to laugh and kiss and have friends. But how do I invite her to my house? The closest I'm ever going to get is the same building. The second day was worse than the first, for Althea could not find the courage to enter the cafeteria at all, but brought a bag lunch and sat on a bench outside, pretending she liked the outdoors, pretending she liked breezes in her hair in order to compose her thoughts. Lies, all lies. On the third day, she forced herself into the cafeteria again. She did not actually get in the lunch line. She drifted on the edges, trying to think of a strategy. Cheerleaders, thought Althea. Important people, jocks, the party crowd. They're always on another side of the room, sitting at a different table, laughing at a different joke. There's no way to cross that dividing line. Either you're popular, or you aren't. Her heart filled with longing to be special, the way they were. She inched closer to hear their affectionate, silly talk. Althea paused next to Celeste's table, pretending her attention was caught by something beyond. An interesting tableau, perhaps, of dietitians and cooks. In the cafeteria, she was camouflaged like an animal in the jungle. Merely another anonymous student passing by to get extra ketchup or another dessert. They paid no attention to Althea. They just rattled on about their cars. It seemed that Ryan's car had only one working door out of 4, and that to get in and out you had to use the rear right passenger door. Althea imagined herself in the crowd, giggling as she doubled over to squeeze in the back, crawling over boys' legs, gear stick and parking brake to reach the front seat. It seemed that Kimmy Jo had backed her new car into a tree. The car's trunk now had an interesting configuration, along with a tree print. Althea imagined herself in the car with Kimmy Joe when it happened, screaming, "What will your parents say? You're dead, Kimmy Joe!" Giggling and suggesting they go to Dairy Queen and have ice cream first, and then deal with Kimmy Joe's parents. Michael, however, had a car that was not only new to him, it was actually new. His father had bought it for his 17th birthday present last week. How like Michael, thought Althea, staring with adoration, forgetting to pretend she was neither watching nor listening. What is like Michael, getting a new car or having a birthday? I don't know. Celeste said sadly, "I'm only 14. I won't be able to drive my own car forever and ever and ever." It's rare that they have a 14-year-old in these books and explicitly say they're 14. Althea's heart hardened. "I'm 16 and I have nothing," thought Althea. "That's okay," said Michael, smiling at Celeste. "We'll give you a ride when you need one." He had such a fine smile. Brotherly, welcoming, yet sexy. He smiled like that at 9th grader Celeste, for no reason except that Celeste was on varsity cheerleading. Althea walked straight into the group. Typical Michael, the born man. It's like that when you have a crush. He has so many interesting features. Like what? He was born. Althea walked straight into the group. She expected to feel the prickles of their distaste, to have Kimmy Joe and Michael and Ryan and Celeste look at her with amazement. An intruder, a pushy, unwanted nobody. But Ryan said, "Hi, Althea, how are you?" Ryan knew her name. She was stunned. "Fine, thank you," she said. "You live in that huge, spooky house at the bottom of the hill, don't you?" said Celeste. Celeste shuddered pleasurably. Her pretty golden hair quivered and boys smiled at her. "They say it's haunted. Have you ever seen ghosts, Althea?" Althea did not like to lie. "I have never seen a ghost," she said carefully. "Your house isn't haunted?" said Celeste with evident disappointment. "Of course not." Althea sensed the group getting ready to move. They were always in transit, these popular people, drifting like a flock of bright-feathered birds from one perch to another. She needed to hold on to them, or at least onto Celeste. She made a quick offering, a dangerous offering, because it trembled on the edge of truth, but it was all Althea had. "We do have a shuttered room, though." "What does that mean?" Celeste had a pretty little giggle and a trick of biting her lower lip as she giggled, taking her breath in funny little snatches. The boys looked on adoringly. "There's a room in the attic," Althea explained. "The circular tower. You may have seen it when you've driven by. The tower room has 3 windows, none of which are ever opened. There are shutters on the inside of the windows and shutters on the outside." "What's the room for?" said Michael. "It's for staying away from." "Oh, wow," said Celeste, entirely satisfied. "I knew that house was haunted." "It's not haunted," said Althea rather sharply. "It's simply that nobody is supposed to enter the shuttered room." "What happens when somebody does?" asked Michael. She paused. She had an answer to that now, of course. For she, a month ago, had done just that. Against all rules, against all tradition, she had touched the shutters. And now she knew what happened. If you were to open the inside shutters, you would hear a whistling gurgle, the sound of somebody struggling for air, the sound of a living person in a locked coffin. If you were to open the outside shutters, the wind would whirl into the tower, and the tower air would whirl out. And in the exchange of old air for new, something passed, something changed. The vampire was set free. She did not know where he came from, inside the tower or outside. She did not know where he stayed, inside the tower or outside. But the shutters were the key to his prison, and he was the key to hers. The vampire could set Althea free. Free from the hostile cafeteria, free from loneliness. You give me Celeste, and I will give you popularity. Althea fastened her eyes on Celeste. Althea's whispery tremor deep in her throat sounded frightening and mysterious. Nobody ever has. It's a family tradition. The shutters in the shuttered room stay shuttered. She smiled, first at Celeste, then at Michael. The kids laughed, repeating the rule like a tongue twister. Susie sells seashells on the seashore. The shutters in the shuttered room stay shuttered. The bell rang, and the kids dispersed, as even popular groups must, for class or gym or art or library. Michael strode blithely alone down the hall, headed for something special, no doubt. He could not possibly take dull, repetitive classes the way she had to. Ryan was bouncier. He lunged in the other direction, as if he had athletic records to set. Kimmy Jo was sultry, stunning, the way she always was, sitting, walking, or cheering. Becky, another cheerleader, popped out of a classroom door, and Becky and Kimmy Jo hugged with that relaxed affection popular people show each other. Unpopular people who did that would just be pathetic. Christ, I'm glad I'm not in high school anymore. Althea caught up to Celeste and walked on with her. Think companionable thoughts, Althea told herself. Don't let Celeste see through you. Think something normal. You know which one my house is, Althea said, but I don't know where you live. Celeste made a face. Oh, Michael is so amazing, he doesn't have maths. No, he has abs class, basketball history. Jokes I stole from E1's morning announcements at George W. Bush Junior Memorial High episode, which is a very good episode. Celeste made a face. Even pouting, she was very pretty. Way out of town, Althea. Miles and miles. I hate living there. I can never go anywhere unless someone's willing to drive me. They're always willing the first time, but they make that trip once and they're not so willing a second time. Say something normal. Where do you live? How do you feel about vampires? Pro? Con? What about gross ones? She's confiding in me, Althea thought. She's treating me like a friend. Maybe she would not have to deliver Celeste to the vampire after all. She and Celeste would become friends, and that would be the door through which Althea entered popularity. Ryan came once, and after that he's just been busy. Celeste sighed deeply, very sorry for herself. And Becky, she came once, and when I asked her to drive me again, she frowned and said my parents would have to bring me to the party. Had she been asked to a party of Becky's, Althea would have slogged across swamps and swum rivers. She was supposed to feel sorry for Celeste, all because Celeste had to get party transportation from relatives. That's rough, said Althea sympathetically. And you heard Michael say he'd drive me, but he's dating Constance, of course, and I can hardly ask him to pick up Constance first and then come for me. So Michael was dating Constance. Constance was one of those overwhelming people who was simply brilliant at simply everything. There was not an activity at which she was not a scholar, at which she did not shine, not a subject in which she was not a scholar, not a sport in which she did not excel. Constance was lovely and willowy, strong and interesting, funny and sweet. Of course, Michael was dating Constance. Althea was exhausted by the mere thought of Constance. Celeste gave several more examples of how unpleasant it was to live so many miles out in the country. It became increasingly difficult to grieve for somebody who had been asked to 3 events last weekend and could get transportation to just 2 of them. After school today, said Althea, would you like to come over to my house? Celeste gave Althea a dazzling, sparkling smile. It was a smile on par with Michael's, a world-class welcome of a smile. Althea warmed inside, forgave Celeste for whining, and thought of friendship. You're so sweet, Althea, said Celeste. That's so nice of you. But I have cheerleading practice, of course. End of chapter 2. And funny and sweet and with an ass that don't stop. Oh, she could be Dux of the school and my heart. Yeah, Althea. I'm not sure she knows what she's after, but so that that was chapter 2. I am definitely going to take the lesbian's word for it. But yeah, she's got such amazing things to say about all these girls. Like every girl has a really vivid personality and things that Althea specifically likes about them. And then the boys, it's like Ryan was kind of bouncy and athletic, I guess, and Michael at some point got born. Boys, eh? Alfalfa. Chapter 3. Ah, you're enjoying it. That's awesome. Chapter 3. After school, Althea did not go home. She drove around town in a jealous rage. Street after street passed beneath her tires like some great black bleak grid of life. If only Celeste had not said, of course. It was that of course that was the knife in the back. A light turned yellow, and in her present mood she wanted to slam down on the accelerator, roar through the intersection, leave a patch on the pavement, and fill the faces of bystanders with foul exhaust. But she drove carefully, as she'd been taught. Then, like lightning filling the sky with sheets of silver, she remembered something. Celeste was too young to drive. But Althea wasn't. I have a license and a car. Why, I'd be happy to drive Celeste home, or to a party, or anywhere else that Celeste might choose. Briefly, anyway, until, well. And, of course, after that, Celeste would be too tired. It wouldn't matter anyhow. You have cheerleading practice, of course, thought Althea. Celeste, my friend, I have a car, of course. And a shuttered room, of course. And a vampire. Althea turned left, then right. She gripped the steering wheel like the compass of life. 3 miles and she was back in the school parking lot. Beyond the buildings and the tennis courts, the football team was practicing. Boys were lined up on each side of the field, hurling themselves at one another. From that distance, it was impossible to tell which heavily padded body was which. Yeah, Michael has no need for maths. He's already been born. He's done the hard part. The school had many L's and additions. Althea circled the building, looking for cheerleading practice. The grass had just been mowed and the air smelled wonderful, like hay and countryside. She remembered the vampire's smell. When he did whatever he did, would Celeste notice the smell first, or would she... Stop, thought Althea. Don't think about the details. Around the next brick wall was a small paved courtyard, and there they were, all 12 of them. Mrs. Relman, their coach, was not pleased. Not even half trying, she was shouting. Not one of you. You're all so lazy. What is cheerleading, an activity for melted marshmallows? You act as if you'd run out of energy spreading peanut butter on bread. Call yourselves cheerleaders? Ha! Wow, that's the meanest thing a PE teacher has ever said. Several girls were close to tears. Several seemed merely irritated, as if they had better things to do than stand around while Mrs. Relman had a temper tantrum, and one was amused. Mrs. Relman did not miss this. "Celeste," she bellowed, "you think this is a joke, perhaps?" "No," said Celeste, trying to smother her laugh. "Of course not, Mrs. Relman." Althea caught Celeste's eye and giggled. Celeste giggled back like a co-conspirator. Or a friend. I should give her another chance, Althea thought. We could be good friends. I know we could, I can tell by the way she's sharing that giggle with me. "One more chance," said Mrs. Relman grimly to her squad. "I said every leg is to reach the same height on the kick, and that's what I meant." Quite a few other people were watching practice. Weird. 2 squad members' boyfriends were leaning against a brick wall playing cards. A boy Althea did not know was doing his chemistry. His glasses had slid down his nose and he looked sweet and childish. 3 ninth grade girls looked at their favourite cheerleaders with open adoration. A little knot of kids was sharing a single soda and monitoring one another's swallows. She would have liked to join the card game, help with the chemistry, sip the soda, even join the 9th graders. But after the first brief glance her way, nobody looked at Althea again. The cheerleaders worked hard. Kimmy Jo had the most style, and Celeste was the most beautiful, but Becky gave off an air of joyful celebration. While the other girls were breathless from exertion, Becky seemed breathless from love of cheerleading. Christ, I miss it. Finally, Mrs. Relman ended practice and stalked off. Althea did not know what she could be grumpy about. In Althea's eyes, the squad was perfect. Celeste, out of breath and pink-cheeked, dropped to the ground next to Althea. "Oh, she's a bear," confided Celeste. This is what friendship is, Althea thought. Somebody telling you something they wouldn't tell somebody else. I can see. Does she always treat you that way? Or worse? Honestly, I don't know where they find these coaches. Althea thought Mrs. Relman was an excellent coach. Certainly the school had the best cheerleaders Althea had ever seen. But she said sympathetically, "Gosh, you must be tired, Celeste." "I'm utterly exhausted. People don't know how difficult cheerleading is. You just don't get the credit you deserve." Celeste arched her back like a cat and slowly melted down. A few golden threads of hair across her forehead annoyed her, and she stroked them into place. Rotating her long neck to relax herself, she added, "And what's more, I have to wait an hour for a ride home. A whole hour, just sitting here, till my parents are out of work and can come for me." What a lovely neck she has, Althea thought. Okay, yeah, I'm picking it up. It really is swan-like, just the way they say a high-fashion model should be. What soft white skin she has. Since we're becoming friends, Althea thought, perhaps I'll ask her if she's ever thought about modelling. I've always wanted to be a model myself. We could go into the city together. I'm so bored, said Celeste. Althea looked at her uncertainly. Nobody's around, Celeste said. Everybody's left. Not quite everybody, thought Althea. I'm here. Celeste ran beautifully polished fingers through her silken hair. Her nails were pale, pale pink. But they could get paler, Althea thought. And I know somebody who would also think that's a lovely neck. You poor thing, said Althea. Well, I'm heading out right now. Want to ride? End of chapter 3. Yeah, I'm getting it. I'm getting it now. You guys are, you know, obviously, obviously getting it sooner than I was. But, yeah. Sucks to be Michael, I guess. Okay, we've been going 45 minutes, but I don't want to leave you hanging on the will Celeste have a ride? What will happen? So, if we're all still having fun, I'm going to plunge into chapter 4. Yeah? Nice. There's something about women that's like so interesting. And as for the boys, oh, I want to date that boy. He's been born at some point. He has a smile. Pretty sure he goes to school here. He's got everything. Chapter 4. Oh, wait, hang on. Let me have a sip of refreshing Coke Zero. It's not refreshing, but it is fizzy. Haven't been drinking much Diet Coke lately. Almost none, actually. Then when I do have it, it's really nice. I'm just listening for Fitzy. Oh yeah, there is a whole group of friends that she would get access to if she had boy. Those friends have boyfriend. They're entrancing and lovely and so beautiful. I feel like I'm totally straight. Don't even look at women's lingerie. Don't even look at my own bras. That's how straight. But this girl had such an amazing neck, and this other girl just loved cheerleading so much. It was so great looking at her. She was so sparkly. Okay, chapter 4. His skin had darkened in patches like fruit going bad. If she touched it, the skin would feel like a sponge. The fingernails seemed detached. She could pluck them, harvest them, fill a basket with old vampire nails. Althea closed her eyes to block out the sight, and then quickly opened them. It was difficult to breathe evenly in his presence, but she knew that if her breathing were ragged and frightened, he would enjoy it. It would give him power over her. So she regulated her breathing. She blocked out visions of Celeste being touched by the vampire's spongy skin, his foul mould against her swan-sweet neck, his smell in her hair. But she had to know. What happened? Said Althea. The vampire looked surprised. You want details? His teeth overhung his lower lip, shimmering like pearls, like Celeste's hair. I don't want details, said Althea hastily. Just, well, an overall picture. With a long, bony finger, the vampire traced his lips, as if savouring something. How thin his lips were, how bloodless. Although actually, he looked somewhat healthier than the last time Althea had encountered him. Althea felt a little queasy. What could have made him healthy? I did, she thought. I actually gave a vampire his victim. The air around her thickened, it crawled up her legs and crowded against her spine and her heart and her head. She could not see the air, but she could feel it, all woolly and damp, whispering, That's what you did. You're bad. You're evil, Althea. She straightened her back and stiffened her jaw. I did what I had to, she thought, and Celeste deserved it. So there. The dark drapery that seemed to be the vampire's clothing shifted and swirled as if it were leaving, but the vampire stood still. The hem of his black cloth blew toward Althea. She stepped back, and the black cloth reached farther, trembling eagerly. The vampire collected it back and wrapped it around himself like a container. To Althea, he said, "It was only necessary for Celeste to enter the path of my control. Once you and she circled the house, she was within my light path." "Light? You're dark. You're night." "It is in fact the dark path," admitted the vampire. "I thought you would better understand a comparison to the rays of the sun." He smiled again. His teeth the only bright thing on earth, those notched, glittering fangs that Celeste had known. Had it hurt? Had Celeste understood? Had Celeste talked to the vampire? Did she know who'd led her onto the dark path? Althea looked off to the side. It was dark this early in the morning. Frost sparkled on the ground. The hemlocks and firs were black as night. The moon was still visible. Stars trembled. There was no wind. The world lay quietly in the shadowy circle of the house and the trees. "I was able," said the vampire, his voice as wet and muggy as a swamp, "to migrate within Celeste's boundaries." To migrate. It sounded like swallows and robins. It sounded pretty and graceful. An annual event. She was very relieved. She had thought the word would be puncture, or stab, or even gnaw. But migration? That was peaceful. Perhaps Celeste had not even noticed. Yesterday, Celeste had stayed on to have a coke, had admired Althea's bedroom, shivered at the spookiness of the shuttered room. When Althea drove Celeste home, Celeste had chatted about school, about boys and clothes. Celeste had not sounded like a girl caught in a dark path. The black cloth escaped from the vampire's twisted fingernails. Little threads from a frayed edge spun toward her, like a spider's web hoping to snag her. The fringe wove itself into more cloth and grew in Althea's direction. Althea said slowly, "Am I in your dark path?" "No. There are some people who are unreachable." He reached me pretty well, thought Althea. I gave him Celeste. What if she knows? What if she says so in school? What if she tells people? You open the shutters, Althea. You and I, we are evenly matched. We are both in control, and both of us may go only so far. But Celeste, I fear, is in a different category. He did not look as if he feared a thing, or ever had. It was not fear that lined his lips, but hunger. I'm not in control, Althea thought. If I were in control, I would have made myself popular the day high school began. So, after midnight, said the vampire, his voice wafting past like fragrance, the sound of his pleasure like perfume, I visited Celeste. Althea looked quickly down at the ground. It swayed, or Althea did. She reached out for something on which to steady herself, but the only object near her was the vampire. She yanked her arm back, shoved both hands in her jeans pockets. Then she spread her feet for a firmer stance. She was glad to be wearing a heavy jacket. Maybe they were evenly matched, but a few extra layers of protection couldn't hurt. She adjusted the collar on the jacket, tucked it under her hair, zipped the fat silvery zipper up to her chin. The vampire laughed, and this time she did not turn her head away fast enough, and she saw his laugh like the curve of the moon, a pale crescent of evil amusement. What have I done, she thought, wanting the wind to come up and the sun to rise. The black drapery flew out behind him like bat wings. He pulled the cloth back and went on laughing. Her breath felt stale and used. It seemed to Althea that her own breath was her soul, rising up a sad and lesser thing than it had been. "Dawn is nearly here," murmured the vampire. He gestured with a finger like foil toward the pink beginning of a new day. "Go to school, my dear. It will begin." "What will?" "Being popular, of course. Isn't that what you wanted?" His words were as whispery as the wind. His skin, the colour of mushrooms, faded into the dawn. His black drapery vanished among the hemlocks. The air stayed thick and swampy where he had stood. With difficulty she drew a breath. She tasted him and spat the air out, walking backward, covering her mouth until she was near the garden, where the air was fresher. In the house, she had little appetite for breakfast. "You did what you had to do," she told herself. "And it wasn't so bad. Celeste is just going to be tired, and you get to be popular." Yeah, the vampire doesn't seem like like he's bound particularly by the laws of honesty. For so many months, Althea had entered high school with her eyes lowered, her posture caved in to keep from having to see that nobody saw her. Today she walked with eyes lowered and posture caved in because if they do look at me, will they know what I've done? Who it is that I talked to in the dark? What I gave him? "Althea!" cried a girlish, happy voice. Althea spun around as if being attacked. "Althea, I love your hair like that," said Becky gaily. Ooh, catching up to Althea. "It's all fluffy and kind of, I don't know, sparkly." Becky, the best cheerleader. The one Althea most wanted to be liked by and to be like. Althea wet her lips with nervousness. "I was out early this morning," she admitted. "The mist probably settled on my hair." "Up early?" asked Becky. "I'm always up early too. That's so neat to meet somebody else who does that. See, my parents always go for a pre-breakfast run down to the lake and back. Their circuit's 5 miles. Becky beamed joyously. "Lots of times I go with them." How demented, Althea thought. Running 5 miles on purpose when you could be lying in bed. That is, yeah, well, she's not wrong. Gaily, yes, confirmed, am I right? Althea struggled to return Becky's exuberant smile. "And why were you up early?" Becky asked. Althea tried to think of an explanation, but nothing came to mind. "I really like the stars in the night sky," said Althea. It sounded very lame, even more so than running 5 miles. She had scarcely noticed they'd been joined by Ryan. Okay, she's not noticing boys particularly. She was dumbfounded when Ryan said, "No kidding. I took astronomy last year, Althea, and I really got into it. You know the night sky changes continually, so the constellation you could find in March isn't the same as the one you find in November." "You and your constellations," said Becky indulgently. Boys only like one thing and it's disgusting. Constellations. She gave Ryan a friendly poke. He tugged her ponytail back. "Althea doesn't care about that, Ryan." "I'd like to learn," said Althea. "I'm really quite ignorant. I just sort of go outdoors and stare upward. I don't know anything, really." "Do you have a telescope?" asked Ryan seriously. It had never crossed Althea's mind to want a telescope. "'Cause that tower room in your attic would be such an excellent location," said Ryan. "I mean, you're in a really dark part of town." If he knew how dark, he wouldn't be so eager, Althea thought. "No streetlights," said Ryan. No lights from all-night car dealerships. Nothing to spoil your view of the stars. He smiled at her. He said, I have a telescope you could learn on. He's suggesting that he could come over. Ryan of the football team. At my house. He wants to give Althea a friendly poke. Becky, bored by stars, said, Did you get that algebra, Althea? I thought it was really hard. Althea had forgotten that she and Becky were both in second year algebra. Of course, they never sat near each other. Becky sat with another cheerleader named Dusty. Normal people could not have nicknames like Dusty. They would get teased until they actually became dust, or lint, or other underfoot objects. Only a cheerleader could say out loud, with pride, My name's Dusty. She's not wrong. Ryan said, I could bring my telescope over. We could put it in the tower room. The tower room, Althea repeated. Her hair prickled. No. She could not ever have anybody in the tower room. The vampire was free, his dark path lit. The one with all the shutters, Ryan explained, as if Althea were not familiar with it. Oh, wouldn't it be neat to have a slumber party in that tower room? Becky cried. Althea could not think. A slumber party? How she wanted to have a slumber party. A dozen girls all at her house, all laughing and happy and glad to be there. A dozen girls? But the tower room? Becky locked arms with Althea. Together they headed for algebra. Ryan trailed after them, talking about telescopes and stars. Far down the hall, Michael waved, smiling. Althea felt her popularity rising on that wave. Dusty Springfield, famous lesbian. And apparently, cheerleader. Yep, a dozen girls all laughing and happy to be there, and it's just smelling really good. You know, slumber parties. Becky said, We don't have cheerleading practice today. Do you want to come over to my house, Althea? Becky plopped down on the first available seat. Not her usual seat near Dusty. I mean, first we'll go to Mickey D's, of course, and meet everybody, but then we could go over to my house. She yanked Althea down next to her. Becky got a teasing, provocative look on her face. Ryan lives next door, she said, as if making an offering. We could play telescope together. Ryan heaved a great sigh. He had followed them into algebra. Althea was confused. Ryan didn't have algebra. He was a year older. He had trigonometry. Why was he accompanying them here? My telescope, Becky, said Ryan, although he was facing Althea, is not a toy. Although I'm sure Althea and I can think of plenty of games to play. He winked at Althea. Ryan had winked at her. Michael had waved at her. Becky had sat with her. Althea didn't care what had happened to Celeste. She would never care. She winked back at Ryan. You're sick, Ryan, said Becky. Get out of here, you're annoying the algebra class. Go to your silly trig. How does playing telescope work? Oh, Nick. All in good time, we men. I'll tell you when you're older. Holy shit. The vampire represents compulsory heterosexuality. If you sacrifice the women and the closeness with them that you really want, you can have social success. What? That's crazy. That's really good. Ryan grinned. No, someone winks at her and she thinks it was worth giving someone to a vampire. It's an interesting reading, and I think it's pretty good. Ryan grinned. I'm not sick, he told Althea. I'm a very interesting person. So you coming to Mickey D's, Althea? Mickey D's. She nodded, and he nodded back, and that was heaven. She burned with joy. She felt like a house on fire. When the algebra teacher called on her, she had the right answer. And when Becky made a joke, she had a quick laugh. I'm here, thought Althea. I'm where I deserve to be. Among friends. The end of the chapter. Ooh. Oh. I mean, okay, Michael D'Onofrio, the drug dealer. Yeah, you gotta go to Mickey D's. Bro, how do you think cheerleaders do it? All that jumping around and clapping and shit. Well, I don't know how normal cheerleaders do it. He's Vincent's son, actually. I really want to keep going, but I can't. My voice probably won't hold up to it, but... I mean... No, that's a long chapter. Come on, we can't do that. Be sensible. And like, I didn't want to do stupid voices for this one because it is actually, you know, interesting. And not incredibly poorly written like the Fair Street Sagas. Oh, thank you so much for enjoying it. Is it that long? Is it that long? Alright, one more. One more. Didn't get where you are today by being sensible, that's fair. You can have a lot of fun without being silly. But not as much fun as you can have being silly. One more chapter, let's go. If we're up for it. It's been an hour already. This is longer than an episode of something that's less than an hour long. Chapter 5. But before McDonald's or Mickey D'Onofrio, the drug dealer, came music. Chorus was another high school group that had not turned out the way Althea had expected. She was one of 16 altos. She had not made friends. She yearned to sit between two girls, both of whom would talk to her. Instead, she sat on the end of a row, sticking out into the room, next to one girl who never turned her way. Sitting on the end gave her a good view of the curved sections and the friendships other people had made. I could sit in the middle, she thought, with a popular alto on my left and a cute baritone on my right. Not specifying the genders, it's girls. She steeled herself. And a third girl on her lap. Yeah. In a strictly hetero way, we're talking about boys. She steeled herself and moved sideways over book bags and shoes. She said to the alto, "Mind if I sit here?" The alto beamed at Althea. "Sure, that'll be a nice change." And Dusty, whose seat it usually was, said, "Oh, good, I'm sick of being suffocated in the middle of the pack. Thanks, Althea." She sat in the centre, one of a crowd. The laughter and chat wrapped her up like a blanket hot from the dryer. She giggled with the boy on her right. He said, "I'm really sorry, but I don't know your name." "Althea." "What a cool name. I never heard that before." He smiled. "Althea," he repeated. Before she could ask his name, the music director whacked the top of his stand with his long white stick and, in his martial arts way, began warm-up exercises. I don't know what that means. How special her voice sounded from the middle. Being an alto wrapped her in companionship. The boy's voice, an octave lower, added a dimension to singing she had never known. For the first time that year, the director met her eye, smiled, and nodded at her. She felt like an opera star. Yeah, we didn't really have popularity. We just had, like, some girls were rich. We definitely had unpopularity. Everyone else. The director cut them off. In the silence before he gave more orders, Celeste entered the music room. Her sparkling eyes were dull. Her golden hair was limp. There were 3 steps down because the room was designed for tiers of singers or instrumentalists. Celeste stood at the top. She shifted her load of books to her other side for better balance. Celeste felt her way down 1 step, panted slightly and rested before taking the next step. "You're late," said the music director sharply. "Sorry." Celeste looked foggy. "I felt sort of slow today." "I'm not interested in excuses," said the director irritably. "You are late. I do not tolerate lateness." Celeste shuffled down another step. Yeah, hang out with people who don't want to beat you up. That is the win of high school. The other way to win is to survive it, which, high five, everyone here has. And in the future, if anyone who hasn't survived high school is watching this, if we did it. She feels drained. Yeah. The boy next to Althea muttered, "This is a cheerleader. No wonder we don't win any games." What a dick. He rolled his eyes as Celeste tried to focus on the final step down. "Do you want a cane?" he said cruelly. Althea no longer wanted to know the boy's name. She no longer wanted to know her own name. What have I done? She thought. Celeste was just supposed to be a little bit tired. She hardly even looks alive. Althea tried to breathe for Celeste, to suck in rich, clear oxygen that would energize her. But Celeste did not breathe deeply. Celeste stumbled and dropped her books. The music director sighed hugely, exaggerating patience with this idiot who could not even cross a room. The girl who took attendance said dryly, "While we're waiting, Celeste, I'll make announcements. Think you can find the soprano section by then?" If that were me, thought Althea, I'd blush scarlet, but Celeste is just shuffling on. Then Althea herself went white as paste. Celeste was not blushing. How could she? To blush you needed blood. Paragraph break. Becky laughed with intense excitement as if she and Althea were going on a grand expedition instead of just McDonald's. Twisting and turning, Becky told every giddy detail of her day. Her black hair was pulled tightly back into a ponytail, and with every syllable, every move, seemingly every thought, both Becky and her ponytail bounced. Althea tried to concentrate on what Becky was saying, to realize that she was going to McDonald's with the crowd, but she kept seeing Celeste's shoe inching toward the edge of the last step, trying to find bottom. "Lighten up," Becky commanded her. As if it were orders from a general, Althea obeyed. It was only 2 miles to McDonald's, and yet by the time they were in the parking lot, Althea was younger, happier, and noisier. She too bounced out of the car. She too jumped up and down clapping as Ryan drove in to join them. Ryan had been joined by a boy named Scotty. Ooh, I'm just going to be picturing, I don't know if it's like doxing or whatever, but I'm going to be picturing my friend's dad. Ryan had been joined by a boy named Scotty, whom Althea hardly knew. It was a treat to see these 2 muscular young men get out of Ryan's car. First, Scotty dove over the seat back, landing like a beached whale half on the floor and half on the seat. Then, lumbering to his knees, head thrust forward, he opened the right rear door. This door, too, had its problems. Scotty emerged very carefully. "Hey," shouted Ryan, diving over after Scotty. "Don't close that door on my face." "Oh," said Scotty. "Well, I guess I could wait another second or 2. But I'm a fast-track kind of guy. I don't like to hang around, Ryan." This guy is business excellence. He knows what's up. Ryan slid out. First, one long, jeans-wrapped leg. then an arm, a broad chest, a dark and handsome head of hair, and finally, the other leg. Althea had intended to daydream about Michael, but now she found her thoughts encompassed by Ryan. Ryan was a weightlifter who talked of how many pounds he could bench press, and he knew all his muscles by name. He's everything a girl could want. Everybody had a cheeseburger except Ryan, who ordered 3 Big Macs. He ate each in only 4 bites, his teeth dividing each huge burger like pie. Well, that's what's new in my life, Becky said, wrapping up a discussion Althea had missed while admiring Ryan's eating habits and muscles. It's really like, the writing is just like so on point when it's describing this horrific vampire, and also making fun of a high school and a high school kid's thought processes in the most brutal way. It's fantastic. Yeah, Althea was admiring Ryan's eating habits and muscles. Althea, your turn to talk. Hold up your end of the conversation. What's new in your life? Ryan, Becky, and Scotty waited. They went on swallowing milkshakes, waiting to hear what was new in her life. What's new in my life? Thought Althea. I've gotten to know a vampire quite well. His skin is the colour of mushrooms. I don't know how he gets in touch with me. What do you think of Celeste in her altered state? Do you know that I did that? This girl with whom you're having a cheeseburger, she hands people over to vampires? Ryan and Scotty frowned slightly. All of this was in her head. She didn't say it. Becky looked irritated. Althea struggled to think of things to talk about. Had anything happened in class? After school? Had she gone shopping? Or even cleaned her room? It seemed to Althea that except for the vampire, she had no life. Suddenly, to her horror, the vampire was standing there. Her throat closed up, her eyes glazed. He's not here, she thought. He can't come into a McDonald's. Certainly not in broad daylight. This is not fair. The backyard is one thing, but... She opened her eyes. He was not there. Her nerves had fabricated him. She breathed again, and realised to her shame that the solitary sigh was her only contribution to the conversation around her. Becky giggled. Well, that was exciting, Althea, she said. We must chat about this again one day. Don't pick on her, said Ryan. You're so mean, Becky. She's not mean, said Althea quickly. I'm just slow. Ryan took this opportunity to discuss his telescope. Weightlifting was his daytime activity. Stars were his nighttime activity. Scotty took this opportunity to mention several things that normal teenage boys enjoyed doing at night, as opposed to something lame and pitiful like studying satellite orbits. Here's what I say, said Becky. I say we have a party at Althea's because it's new and we haven't partied there and I'm sick of all the old places. Ryan can set up his telescope in that tower room while we dance on those big old porches. Althea's smile trembled. She had fulfilled her obligation to the vampire. She could do as she pleased. And yet, she had not shut the shutters. Was he still there? Where was that dark path exactly? Could he touch other people? Like Becky? Althea's body was rigid, as if her blood had stopped circulating, or been drained. I don't know if that would work out, Becky. I mean, I'd love to, but... All right, said Becky sulkily. I just think it's somebody else's turn, that's all. It seems to me the parties are always at my house. That's because your parents let you do anything all the time, Becky, Ryan said. Most people's parents never let them do anything. He stuffed his napkins into his cup, stuffed his cup into his burger box, and squashed the whole thing into a remarkably small square. "So what's Celeste's problem?" he said to Becky. Althea's stomach knotted up. This was it. This was where they found out, where they understood, and they caught her. "Oh, I mean, she hasn't shut the shutters. Why not, Althea?" Oh, you feel so bad about it. So bad. Becky shrugged. She didn't want to talk. Said she was tired. "She stumbled around school today like a zombie," said Scotty. "She could at least have been polite," said Becky. "Here she is, a 9th grader. Everybody on the squad's been so nice to her, and she couldn't even be bothered to let us in on her problem. I asked her if I could help, and she shrugged." "That did it, that shrug. You don't have secrets from your teammates. They don't like it." "Let's not talk about Celeste," said Ryan. "Let's talk about you." He meant her. Althea. Ryan wanted to talk about Althea. An uncertain, joyous smile began on her lips. Ryan said, "Come on, more. More." He touched her lip corner with his finger and drew the corner up till Althea laughed out loud. "Celeste won't be tired long," Althea thought. "She'll perk up in a few days. I'm not going to worry. Anyway, it's worth it." End of chapter 5. Now we really are going to finish, but So Celeste didn't really have any friends. Everyone is bitches. Which I guess is something everyone has to learn. The friend group in high school that you're so... Celeste is dead. Everyone is dead and in hell. Everyone is a Time Lord. Thank you. I'm really enjoying sharing this book with you guys. I read it very young. And I miss cheerleading. I'm going to do the next live read in my old uniform. Like I fit my old uniform. Maybe I do. I'm not going to do a live read in my uniform. That's ridiculous. Unless I fit it. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. It's been a really nice day. I got to see Di. I got to meet a cat named Warren. I got to try on a sailor suit like an anime at a shop. Crazy. Who buys them? Who wants them? I don't know. And I got to do this live read. So thank you very much for being here and enjoying this with me. And oh god, this necklace is so cheap. It's making me itch. I will see you all tomorrow, which is Friday. And hopefully Fitz will come in a minute. Oh, and Evelyn gave me a mask that she made for me and it's red. And I love it. Even though it doesn't fit. Where is it? It's traveled in my handbag. How does my handbag just eat items? It's a big mask. It's like the Twilight Zone. It's Little Girl Lost over here. Anyway, I'll show you the mask next time. See you guys tomorrow. Have fun and don't go into the shuttered room. Oh, boo, don't call it a spoken word gratitude journal. I'm going to stop doing it. I'm going to start saying things that piss me off all day. I love you. It's a bag of devouring. Danny, that's a private name for something private. Sorry. Good night.